Welcome to another episode of Cocktails with Creatives. Today I have a friend, Kieth Kirchoff. Kieth is a pianist and composer and does a lot of really cool things in many different areas of our field. Kieth is also an avid drinker of cocktails and likes talking about cocktails and all sorts of things related to beer and cocktails and all different sorts of things. So, welcome, Kieth.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is really
I'm so
exciting.
happy to have you.
Really
Um,
glad. I mean, we kind of talked about this before we opened, but when you first mentioned this idea at Splice Institute in one of our after concert hangouts, and I thought this idea was so cool, and I was like, yes, I want to be on that. So I'm really glad this worked out.
Yeah, well, it was, and I will say, I want to thank Keith because it was like in the back of my mind when I was thinking about the idea, and when he said it was a good idea, that was like, okay, I need to make this happen. And I knew he would get on eventually, and here we are. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the things, share, and we're just gonna have a conversation this evening. And to start, Keith is going to teach me how to make this drink. What drink are we making?
So we're going to make the Black Manhattan, which is one of my absolute favorite cocktails. So as a cocktail enthusiast, I'm interested in spirit forward drinks. So I don't know how knowledgeable about cocktails your viewership base is, but basically, cocktails kind of come in two big camps. You kind of have fruit forward cocktails and you have spirit forward cocktails. So spirit forward cocktails don't have any juice added, and they tend to, well, just be all spirits. And so the Manhattan is a very, very common and very famous classic spirit forward cocktail. And the Black Manhattan was developed by a bartender named Todd Smith, kind of early 21st century. I couldn't find the exact date. I found some sources say 2003 and other sources say 2015. I have no idea, but it's become kind of an old classic cocktail in its own right. And it's just a really simple riff on the Manhattan that I probably drink more than any other cocktail. Like it's the basis now that I do. I design all my other cocktails kind of around that Black Manhattan, and I'm really psyched to, yeah, to share it with you today and teach you how to make it, and hopefully make you a convert and fan now too.
I've been learning a lot of things about cocktails on this show, and I'm super excited to do this. How do we get started?
So let's do it. So the it calls for really just three very basic ingredients. So one is Rittenhouse rye, then an Amaro. So Amaro is an Italian liqueur that tends to be, each one is very different. They really run the gamut, but they all are kind of sweet. They have, and they all have different spices. So some tend to be kind of common with baking spices, warming spices. You find others that have a lot of mint kind of characters. You have others that are more citrusy charactered. But the Amaro in the Black Manhattan is what replaces the vermouth. So it's that sweet liquor that goes in there. And then just the standard bitter, Angostura bitters. After these three ingredients, then there's a couple ways you can make some variations. So we'll kind of get started with these three, and then I'll talk through the variations. Although I'll do the Spencer and I are going to be doing the same one this evening. So you have Spencer, you have a different Amaro than I do.
Yeah,
You got which one again?
the
Nonino, is it?
Amaro Nonino.
Yes. So Nonino is a really classic Amaro. It's delicious. I think it's going to work super, super well. Todd Smith uses Averna, which is kind of if you go to a nice cocktail bar, Averna is probably the Amaro you're going to see on the shelf and they're probably going to use. Myself, I really love the Amaro Tossolini as my favorite Amaro in this, and I have to give a shout out to a dear friend of mine, Mark Whitlock, who converted me to this Amaro for this drink. I introduced him to the drink, then he introduced me to this Amaro, and there is no going back. But Nonino is going to work really, really well too. So first thing is we do 2.5 ounces of rye. So measure that out. All right. 2.5 ounces of rye. And if you don't have Rittenhouse, you can make it with, you can certainly make it with other ryes. I think rye works better than bourbon. Bourbon tends to be a little sweeter and a little softer. Rye has a little bit more of a spicy punch from that rye, and that cuts through really nicely in a Black Manhattan, especially with some of the herbal characters of the Amaro. And if you do use a different rye, you want to use something around the neighborhood of 100 proof. So 50% alcohol, which gives it, again, enough body to kind of cut with the Amaro. So 2.5 ounces of rye, and then we add 3/4 ounce of Amaro. And then just 2 dashes of Angostura. And that is it. So add some ice and give it a good stir. I usually stir for somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 seconds for something that's this this boozy. I like to stir it a little bit more. So stirring with ice does 2 big things. One, of course, is it chills it, and kind of cooling it down really makes it really pleasant and quite quaffable. And then the other thing that it does that a lot of people overlook, especially people who freeze their spirits, is it dissolves some water into the melts some water into the cocktail, which helps kind of lighten the overall alcohol, and it makes it it just makes it more palatable, makes it easier to go down. So you don't want your cocktail to burn. Then take a chilled coupe and strain that in there. Now here is where we can do some variants. So I always put in maraschino cherry, a Luxardo maraschino cherry, or a brandied cherry. Spencer, you actually have got your own like homemade brandied cherries, which is pretty awesome. If you do use cherry, do not use a cheap cherry. It's better with no cherry than with a cheap one. If it's neon red, it's a bad cherry. So drop that cherry in, and I like to add a little bit of the syrup that's kind of coating the spoon. It doesn't really mix, it just looks pretty. And because I'm the only one using this spoon today, I can lick it. All right, so now this could be served as it is. However, there's 2 different things you could do. What I usually do at this point is add a little mist of absinthe. I've just got a little spray bottle and just kind of do 3 spritzes over the top and let it coat it, just to give it a little bit of that, that absinthe aroma, the licorice, the fennel. But we don't have that. We didn't both have it. So the other thing you can do is an orange peel. And what makes in this sort of drink an orange peel even better is flaming the orange peel. So go ahead and make a little peel off a little of the zest. I always peel it right over the glass, so any little of the zest gets in there. And then we're going to take a match. And I recommend for this using a match and not a lighter. Lighters actually give off a little bit of a flavor that kind of impacts the drink negatively. So I like to use a match, light it enough to let that the edge kind of burn down, And then over the drink, you just spritz the orange, and you're going to see it flame a bit. And then always wipe the edge of the glass with the orange. It kind of gives a nice little, extra little aromatic. So this is the burnt orange, and then go ahead and drop it in. So the burnt orange is kind of fun because it just gives a little bit more depth, a little bit more complexity to the orange peel. And it's also really fun and is a really fun party trick when you whip out matches and start making little fire bursts. And then it's done. Super simple. Cheers, friend.
Cheers. You get that, like, that smokiness from the orange is super nice, actually.
Yeah, and it's just a little bit, just a tiny bit of smoke, but like, you can play with that. Like if the smokiness is something you really like, you could play with some different bitters that might have a smoky character. You could add a rinse of Lafroig on the bottom to give it a little smoke. You could, I've been making a brandy cocktail that's kind of similar, where I use a little bit of Lafroig to get a nice rinse of the smokiness. It's such a classic, simple drink that you can just go in whatever direction you like. There's a reason the Manhattan has stayed a classic cocktail for so many years. I mean, well over a century, getting close to 2 centuries old. So.
Wow. That's so good. Yeah, it's thank you for sharing this with me.
I love introducing people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting hearing you talk about this and the passion that you have for this thing that's not music, on a show that is mostly music forward. And I've had a couple other people who aren't musicians on, but most people probably know you as pianist, composer, one of the co-founders of the Splice Ensemble, with the institution and the festival and all these different things. I'm so curious, like, with cocktails and whatnot, where do you see this fitting into your life as part of, who Kieth is?
Yeah, it's funny, you can say, oh, I find alcohol amazing, and everybody's like, oh, that's a problem. But I actually find the history of spirits and spirits culture and alcohol culture in all these, countries all over the world so fascinating. And it's kind of that thing that so if I travel somewhere, you learn so much about a culture by studying their native spirits that probably have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. You learn so much about Mexican history by studying mezcal and tequila. You learn so much about France and Italy by studying wine. You learn so much about Belgium and Germany by studying their beer history. And it's kind of that entry into getting to know the culture on a deeper level. And then even just here at home, it's that way to have, kind of like we're doing now, to just have a conversation. And we could just sit and have a conversation, but it's so much, there's something, just about sharing a drink that we've been doing for millennia. We've had meetings and over drinks together. In social gatherings, like a conference setting, like if we're at Splice or if we're at Seamus or the big electroacoustic music festival, going to the bar afterwards is where most of the interesting like getting to know you happens. It's where most of the collaborative ideas come out. It's where most of the it's where yeah, where these projects, where these friendships, where these collaborations all kind of grow and blossom is at the bar over a beer afterwards, not necessarily sitting in the hall. Like sitting in the hall is how you are uh, maybe first introduced to their work, but then you're introduced to the person over this drink. So it's for me, it's just it's been a particularly fun uh, vehicle into getting to know people, getting to know cultures, getting to know history. And then also, just honestly, as a human, I am uh, the type of person who, when I get into something, I want to know everything about that something. I can't just be like, oh, this is nice, and then go on. If I like it, it's like I need to be researching it just constantly. So my most recent spirits obsession, I kind of hinted at it before, is Mescal. The last trip I was able to go on before the pandemic shut down was a tour of Mexico City with the Splice Ensemble. And I had gone, though, with like doing all this research ahead of time into Mescal. I had all of these, like, I had not literal binders, but like digital notebooks of like notes and where I wanted to go and how I wanted to like get to know this spirit now that I was in its homeland. Um, and of course, Adam and Sam are just like, this is great. Let's enjoy it. Let's have fun. And I'm like taking notes the whole time. It's just kind of the weird way my brain works. If I get into it, I want to get like all the way into it. I still homebrew a little bit, but I was a home brewer for a very, very avid home brewer for 10 plus years. Where similar, it's just like I didn't just want to enjoy beer; I wanted to make it. I wanted to know everything about the process. Yeah, it's a fun kind of escape from to something that doesn't really matter, but it's a fun way to put your passion into something that has no bearing on your career.
Yeah, I get that completely, and I think that that's what's been so kind of fun about this show, though, is
Mhm.
that I've kind of got to explore my hobbies maybe a little bit further
Yeah.
than I thought I ever would. And I'm realizing, like, just through this process, like what I like and not about cooking and what I like about creating cocktails and whatnot. And actually, for me, it's the I really like the improvisatory elements of it.
Mhm.
And the next episode that will come out sometime around this episode when I improvised based off of ingredients that were told to me the day of the
Awesome.
event, chop style, and I it's good. I think it's really important for musicians to have um, and really for everybody to have that thing that is not related to what their work is, the thing
Yeah.
that is interesting to them, that they can enjoy and is relaxing. I
Yeah.
think that you can't. I we work all the time, and it's there's more to life than work.
There really is, and in terms of the spirits in particular and its intersection, like I find them extremely artistic. Making a cocktail is an interesting blend of culinary science, and improvisation and creativity and artistry, and how are you going to present it, how it is this visual and you know sensory work of art. Beer is this wonderful meeting of science and art as well. Like there is a legit science that you better understand if you're going to make it, but there's also a science to music. There's like it's so much more it's more than the science, but that science is still part of it. It's really all about art. Um, yeah, I don't know. I find it interesting, and another way to engage with artists that aren't musicians or maybe aren't visual artists in a traditional sense.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. So let's move to Splice,
Yeah.
the Splice Festival. The Splice Festival just happened this last weekend,
Hmm.
um, and I was able to tune in for a couple things.
Awesome.
The you know it's this really great festival that if you haven't heard of, please go check it out because it's just a really great thing that they do. Um, because the thing that I like about the Splice like organization is that the right way of saying it? Like just the ensemble
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
umbrella of everything that the ensemble does. Um, the is just how much of a community is there. It's not just about Kieth and the other guys who are also great, by the way. In in this band that present things, they've created this community of people. Multiple people who I've met at the Splice Institute have been on this show. Robin Makesons was my first guest. The cooking show, and
Yeah.
you know Robin's a good friend of Splice. Um, the I'm so curious, like hearing you talk about cocktails and that missing aspect to it. I'm curious, like how is presenting the Splice Festival fundamentally changed because of that missed opportunity to have that nice cocktail.
Um, in terms of having it go virtual,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it did. It did change. There is no, there's no way around it. The There were two things that we really wanted to make sure we maintained when we went virtual. And so you mentioned the community. So this was the same for the Institute, but the community aspect was super important to us. We don't, at Splice, it's not just about presenting music. It's not just a music festival. All of us met through through the social aspects of our work through music. So Chris Biggs, the co-founder of Splice, with me, like we met at this really esoteric little summer music camp in Arizona one summer when we were both still in school, and it was partially about making music and about making really good music and about being very, very passionate about that music. And it was so much about the community of, there were six of us at that festival. And so that community of the six of us with the people who were there, the California Ear Unit ran it. And so the six young composers and the California Ear Unit. And this sense of true community and really getting to know each other and everybody as equals, and it really made a huge impact on all six of the composers that were there. And Chris and I became, that started a friendship and colleague aspect that has continued to last decades later, and will last, I'm sure, until one of us dies. But so like that community aspect is part of what Splice is founded on. And so when you move to a virtual space, it was important that we find some way to maintain that. And there's just no substitution for going to the bar, or for hanging out at the coffee shop. There isn't a substitution. And yet, we tried to, for Institute, in June, we tried, just having various Zoom hangout rooms that people could go. You, Spencer, were great. You brought your Jackbox games. Something we later stole for a festival.
It's probably a good time to transition though to from the social to content.
Yeah. So the content of the festival was, it was interesting because most of the, so when we decided to go virtual, we reached out to everybody who was going to be a part of the festival and invited them to choose to participate or, choose not to. And by far, most of them were like, yes, like, let's do this. We're on board. There were a couple people who, only one or two people just backed out, and that's totally understandable. And then there were a couple people who they were like, I want to do this, and I don't know how we're going to do this because, we don't have access to our space. We don't have access to our equipment because we're students, and that's at the school that we're not allowed to go into. And what was fascinating to me is how creative, profoundly creative everybody was in their production of these videos. So for this, for every program, every participant produced their own video and submitted it, and we, streamed it on one of the concerts. And there were a few, and there's nothing wrong with this, but there were a few who, we saw just somebody playing on stage. And again, that was wonderful, and it's great music, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. And then there were so many people who kind of went this extra step of being super creative in how they're going to interact with the video, or are they going to do different types of camera angles? Are they going to do effects? One video that stood out to me was Alex Lowe's. He's an electronicist and improviser. And he was one, and hopefully this isn't, betrayal of confidence, but he was one who, leading into it, he was like, I don't know if I can participate because I don't have access to my stuff. And his video was so creative. He takes his rig outside at night, and you see him in the dark, and he's got these lights that are interacting with his music, but because it's a video and he had someone filming him, we're able to get right up close. We see his face. We see these lights amidst this dark nature scene. We hear crickets that somehow are perfectly interacting with the music he's producing. And so would that have been amazing in a concert hall? Absolutely. And yet there was something so special about what he produced that part of me is left wondering if that was like, I got this wonderful experience that wouldn't have been gotten in the concert hall. Was it even better? I just pointed out Alex, but there are so many, and people in the comments the whole time were commenting on like, wow, like the production of these, the video quality. I think in some ways this pandemic has led us as new music musicians, as creative artists, as composers, as performers, to, we are people who think outside the box. We are people who are looking to do innovative things. And we've been, cut off from our major outlet of performance. And I think so many people are rising to find really unique and fascinating ways to take advantage of this, this predicament we're in, to create some pretty badass art. I mean, every concert I was blown away with what people were doing. And yeah, so it's sort of a blessing that it became a virtual festival.
You touched on something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and it's this idea that we have to try to maintain a sense of normalcy by trying to recreate the concert hall in a live performance type setting. And I've been moving away from that. And one of the things that I remember very clearly from the Splice Institute was that you, Sam and Adam, chose to present your concerts in 3 different ways. One was a pre-record, one was live, and one was like a hybrid kind of thing, if I recall.
Yep.
And I've really been thinking a lot about this lately, and I think yours was the pre-record, I think.
Sam's was entirely pre-recorded and pre-produced. Mine was the hybrid.
Yeah, that's what
it was all recorded live, but I did record it ahead of time so that I could superimpose the video pieces like in back of me and like actually do some video production. So yeah, but it was recorded live, but you were watching a pre-recorded thing. And then Adam,
right, and I will say, like, I think that to me, like, I've been moving away from the idea of pure live performance for these things. I personally, the tech, just so many tech things go wrong, and and it just becomes not as enjoyable of an experience for me personally.
Absolutely.
But I also think that by choosing to just work within the parameters of the time, and try to create art that is for the time, but not maybe it without having it have to be about COVID. You leave yourself with these opportunities to create something that maybe you wouldn't have created otherwise.
Yeah.
Like for instance, last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I released, and I'm filming this in end of October. I released my kitchen telephone music piece, which was meant for people who can't play synchronously, but wanted to play with other performers. And it is almost entirely improvised. And now, yes, it's influenced by the fact that I've been cooking a ton, but it I was able to get 9 performers or 8 performers, a vocalist and any number of instrumentalists together, and each person is responding to another musician. So, and they're not playing live, but one of the things that I put in the instructions is that they're not supposed to listen to the track from the person before. It's like the game
Hmm.
Telephone,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
idea is that you're maintaining that improvisatory nature of when you hear someone perform for the first time and you're responding to them in real time.
Mhm.
Um, it's not the same thing. I would, of course, love to have someone there in the same room at the same time. But what I gathered, I took away a lot of the pressure from, you don't need to be right. It's not about being right. It's about playing with someone else. And the response that I got from the performers was that of joy, um, because I'm just like, click tracks aren't doing it for me right now.
Yeah.
And I get like it's there's so much good repertoire that's out there, but there's an opportunity to we have challenges, and I don't know, I'm trying to live within those challenges and see how I can create art that is of the time. You're someone who commissions a lot and plays a lot of contemporary music, and I'm curious, the what's happening right now that you've seen during this time that's really exciting to you.
Um, well, honestly, it's kind of this is going to be a lame answer, but it's sort of just how everyone has persevered. Um,
That's
and
not lame.
it's, and not some of us, and I don't want to gloss over how some of us have really struggled. And I think all of us have really struggled to some degree. There are some who are struggling more than others, and I don't want to gloss over that. And I think, and I know that there are some of us who are finding it nearly impossible to be creative during this time. I know that as for myself, I'm finding complete lack of creativity as a composer, and all of my creative outlets are uh, on the production side and as a player. It's not that I'm ignoring my composer side. It's just I'm not. There's something about this that just is not resonating with that side of me, and that's okay. Like it really is fine. And it's been incredible how all of these various artists are making different, they're addressing the same challenges in different ways. They're all uh, there have been just some incredible projects, some ways of overcoming it. And it's sometimes it is just playing a concert live. You're a straight up classical musician and you're playing a concert and it's live streamed. And that's actually like, even though, we just were talking about how maybe that isn't our best solution, for some people, that's a great solution. And it still is an outlet for performance. And then meanwhile, you have some people who are able to find ways to perform in front of people. I haven't gotten to watch it, but I've been seeing on social media how soprano Stephanie Lampria recently performed a live set in front of a very, very limited audience at Roulette. Um, and that's awesome that she's been able to find a way to do something live. You have groups like Transient Canvas, who go on to do their album release party, which I'm selfishly bringing up because I'm on it. Uh, but they still do it, but they found that it worked better for them to pre-record their concert and then interact with the audience that's watching while it's happening. I think there's a great value in that. Like everybody, all these, your telephone piece, people who are finding ways to improvise over Soundjack or Quack Trip or the new one that just came out, which I haven't gotten a chance to play with yet. Sonobus, I think it's called. Um, there are ways for real-time collaboration that are imperfect, but that give us opportunities to do interesting things. Um, I don't know. Like it's art has not stopped. And the other thing that makes it interesting to me, and that in terms of this perseverance, is I think I think we're in store for a very bleak time in American arts funding. Universities are in really rough shape given that students are not attending as much and they can't have in-person classes, and that's where most of our arts funding comes. And the national government certainly isn't going to be shoveling money towards artists, and state governments have, an increasing homeless problem as people are losing their work and can't afford their, you know, all this to say art doesn't go away no matter how bleak it is, and as wherever we are on the spectrum of how bleak it's gonna get, there's still amazing art that's being produced, and you can turn on Facebook at any time or YouTube or anything, and you can be hit with this incredible art project by somebody that's gonna blow you away, that never would have encountered in the pre-pandemic times. I really think people are going to look back on this era as uh, maybe a 5 year span, or however long this is gonna, however long we're going to be creating art in this fashion, several year span of some of the most creative art of the early 21st century. And I don't mean that just hyperboleic. No, I don't mean it like, I mean it very seriously. I think the way we have responded to this is ways that people are going to be talking about for centuries, because it's pretty profound.
I I I'm on the same page, and even like this show, I would have never thought. Why would I do this? Why I don't have time for a
Yeah.
YouTube show where I cook and drink cocktails and spend 3 weeks making a vlog about music theory and white supremacy and in response to Adam Neely and the I don't have that time, but here I'm at because I partly procrastinating, but I was really struggling to find my creativity
Mm-hmm.
particularly earlier on, you know, May, June,
Yeah.
and I found that I really like talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
That community is such an important part of my creative process, and that's what I was craving, and that's what the show is about, is the conversation. I'm sitting here talking with Keith, who I've actually met in real life.
We
Um,
have.
because because the Splice Ensemble is such a great community builder. So much so that I came back for a second year.
Was institute.
The
Yeah.
it's and actually I will say one of the reasons beyond the fact that it was such a good time was that the Splice Institute for the younger for any ages, because it's people from all ages who go to
It's
this thing,
totally.
is that it's not that expensive to attend. You get a week of just like go 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 and constant like connection with people, and everybody hangs out the whole time in a friendly way, but it's also highly educational in ways that most music festivals are not. Um, the or summer type institute programs are not, and and there's not a ton of ego there, and for me, the number one reason for me is that I live in the state of Michigan, and I've been really thinking about my environmental impact of traveling to summer festivals. And hey, this place is an hour away. I can drive there, don't have to get a plane ticket, and I can and I initially that I had like 5 of my friends apply. And it's like we're gonna drive there all together, and my environmental impact, and actually many of them attended. Um, the you know it's a great thing that you all do, and I'm very thankful for the Splice Ensemble and what you do and who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you, thank you. It's that means a lot to hear. And you know, I'm really, really proud of what the organization has been able to do. You know, over it feels like we've been around for 20 years. I look at the calendar and it says 6. Um, but I'm really proud with what we've been able to do and the creative spirits out of everybody on the board. Um, you know, it's besides Chris and myself and the ensemble members of Adam and Sam. I guess I should give names: Chris Biggs, Adam Vidixis, Sam Wells, but then also Eleni Lilios and Per Bloland. Uh, they all just have such great ideas, and so much to teach and share. I know every time I'm there, I wish I was not teaching, that I could actually just attend because I want to sit on their classes. Um, which actually makes something like this festival, when you were talking about some of the ways that this festival was different, the Splice Festival that just happened, is normally in a Splice Festival, the Splice Ensemble is like, we don't get to attend anything because we're rehearsing the whole time. We're working with the composers who were commissioned for that festival. And I got to attend everything. I got to hear the workshops and the lectures, and it was great to actually be able to participate. So it's, you know, there's so much that we all have to teach each other, and that's kind of, yeah, at the core of what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Just take a swig of your Black Manhattan, and then you'll feel better.
So you do a lot of projects. I'm sure you've got something like working out right now. What are you working on right now? What's exciting for you?
Well, it's kind of interesting because where I've gone creatively during the pandemic is not necessarily where I thought I would have gone. But I've gotten really, really interested in old music again. Um, and maybe it's because, you know, as a classically trained pianist, growing up, I had to spend hours and hours and hours alone, you know, by myself in my with my piano. But right now, I've been doing this big list project where I'm playing this 90-minute, 10 movement piano cycle of his that I've loved the piece for years and never had an opportunity to play it. And I'm finally just been working on it for this whole pandemic. And it has been a just it's been the like artistic nourishment that I just need. And it's so weird to be like this new musician who's like been playing all these new things, and now I'm loving nothing more than this piece that was published in 1853. And in a couple weeks, I'm finally going to be. Ooh, I didn't even think of this. This gives me a chance to shamelessly plug it. I'll finally be recording it. There's a fantastic collection of antique pianos that's not too far from where I live. I live in Rhode Island. This is in Western Mass. And the piece was published in 1850, as I mentioned, in 1853. Liszt's piano of choice was an Erard, and they have an 1856 Erard that I'll be recording it on. And it's been so fun to do a project that is so different from everything I've been doing for the last really 20 years. And yeah, I love this piece. I love this music, and it's brought me just great joy, and I can't wait. It's going to be a video recording, so, you know, this it's not really a podcast, but this conversation is on YouTube, so you'll see this on YouTube. Yeah, but it's been really a lot of fun, and I'm kind of excited to see it through to fruition. But it's really with that itch that I've had for a while, really several years, kind of this itch to go back and play old music. But when I was concertizing, it didn't make sense because it didn't ever fit. You know, I'm not going to play a program of electroacoustic music and then throw on a Beethoven sonata. It doesn't make any programmatic sense. And so when all of a sudden all my concerts were canceled, it's like, well, I don't have to play a concert of electroacoustic music. And we already sort of talked about it, but like it's awkward with all the tech and everything to produce your, programs of EA music online. So yeah, it's really just gave me that chance to play play something old, and it's been, I. This might sound weird, but I don't remember the last time I've had this much fun just playing the piano. I love it. So anyhow,
that's really great. Yeah.
that's the project.
Without getting too far into the piano class that I'm currently taking right now on how to teach music theory using the piano, hardest class I've ever taken, by the way. The story for another time. Practicing piano 2 to 3 hours a day.
That's good for it. It's good for you.
Very good for me. It's the most practical, best class I've ever taken. It's also the hardest, most time-consuming class I've ever taken.
I believe
but no, that's so exciting. Where can people find all these things?
At my website, which at the time of this recording is out of date, and hopefully by the time of its publishing will be up to date. My website is kiethkirchoff.com, and I'll spell it just because people tend to spell my name kind of weird, but KeithKirchoff.com.
Great. This has been like a really lovely conversation.
This has been awesome.
I've really enjoyed this, and like I said earlier, Kieth was definitely a very affirming reason why I even do the cocktails version of this show.
Awesome.
So I'm super happy that he's on here. Hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future.
This was a joy, a pleasure, and I'm really, really honored to be a part of it. Thanks for inviting me.
Don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel, drink a cocktail, make one of these. If you make one, tag me and let us know.
Yes.
Because this is delicious. I never had Amaro before. I probably had, but I didn't know. But Amaro is great, and you should drink it. And thanks for such a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Awesome. Good night, all.